Admiral Helena Chen maintained her perfect posture as the Fresnik ambassador's proposal echoed through the council chamber. Her training from the Academy's diplomatic corps kept her face pleasantly neutral despite the burning indignation rising within her chest. 50 years of this treatment. 50 years of smiling and bowing while her people were treated as dangerous curiosities. The human colonies on Proxima Centauri II and Ta Ceti Prime have demonstrated concerning industrial growth patterns. Continued Ambassador Vlamorax, his translucent tentacles pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that signaled superiority to anyone familiar with Fresnik body language. Our security projections indicate potential militarization within 2 decades. Chen resisted the urge to laugh. 2 decades. Earth had militarized those colonies 15 years ago, right under the noses of council inspectors who were too arrogant to recognize human technology when it didn't match their expectations. The Galactic Council's grand chamber stretched above them for nearly a mile, a vast dome where representatives from thousands of worlds gathered in concentric rings. The oldest, most advanced species occupied the inner circles: the Fresnik, the Xanthi, the Maldorians, and the enigmatic crystalline Trisians. Humanity's assigned position was in the outer ring, alongside newly spacefaring civilizations and client species with no real voice. Furthermore, the ambassador continued, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "We propose increased oversight of remaining human settlements, with council observers granted unrestricted access to all facilities." Several species chittered or hummed in agreement. The Artaxian delegation's approval was particularly notable, their 6-limbed forms vibrating in their suspension fields. They had once been classified as Deathworlders themselves before being civilized by the Council 5,000 years ago. They seemed particularly eager to see another Deathworld species put in its place. Chen tapped her finger once against her wrist communicator, a seemingly nervous gesture that actually transmitted a coded signal to Commander Jackson. The countdown now had an exact timetable. "Does the human representative wish to respond?" asked the Trisian High Speaker, its crystalline form refracting light in patterns that conveyed mild amusement. The question was a formality. Human objections had been systematically overruled for decades. Chen rose slowly, gracefully. The chamber's advanced acoustics would carry her voice to every corner without amplification. "The United Earth Government thanks the Honorable Council for its continued guidance," she began, using the formal phrasing that had been drilled into every human diplomat. Her voice carried just the right note of deference. "We acknowledge the security concerns raised by our esteemed colleagues and request a 48-hour recess to consult with Earth regarding these significant proposals." A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Humans typically accepted restrictions without consultation. This small assertion of independence, mild as it was, caused the Moldorian military attaché to lean forward, his scaled brow furrowing. "A recess is granted," the High Speaker announced after a moment of consideration. "The Council will reconvene in 48 standard hours." As representatives began to disperse, the Xanthi diplomat Tehrana approached Chen, her crystalline form shifting into the patterns that indicated private conversation. "Your people seem unusually accommodating today, Admiral," she observed, her tone carrying the faintest trace of suspicion. Normally there would be at least token protest. Chen allowed her diplomatic smile to warm slightly. "Perhaps we're finally learning our place in the galactic community." The choice of words was deliberate. Let them think humanity was at last accepting its assigned role as a second-class species. Let them believe the Deathworlders had been domesticated. In 48 hours, they would learn how completely they had misunderstood humanity's capacity for patience, adaptation, and strategic thinking. The countdown wasn't to a war or a revolution. It was to a revelation. Professor Marcus Okafor pressed his palm against the biometric scanner, and the massive titanium doors to Level 7 slid open with barely a whisper. Even after 15 years of working in this facility, the sight beyond those doors never failed to fill him with pride and a touch of vindication. The cavernous chamber stretched nearly a kilometer across, carved directly into the Martian bedrock. Hundreds of engineers and scientists moved with purpose around the crown jewel of human technological achievement, the quantum displacement engine. The device itself appeared deceptively simple, a spherical core of interlocking rings surrounding a pulsing blue-white light that seemed to simultaneously exist and not exist. "Professor, the final calibrations are complete," Dr. Amara Osi approached, her expression revealing the same mixture of excitement and tension that everyone in the facility shared. "The QDE is achieving 99.8% efficiency in the simulations." Okafor nodded, his eyes never leaving the engine. "The aliens believe quantum entanglement can only be maintained for microseconds. They believe instantaneous communication across galactic distances is impossible." A smile crossed his weathered face. "Their understanding of quantum mechanics is fundamentally flawed by their own perceptual limitations. That had been humanity's greatest advantage. The aliens thought differently, not just culturally, but neurologically. Their scientific blind spots had become Earth's opportunities." "What about the fleet status?" Okafor asked, finally turning away from the hypnotic pulsing of the engine. Dr. Osai handed him a secure tablet. "All 67 ships are ready for deployment. The stealth systems have been tested against the most advanced Maldorian detection arrays we could replicate. We remain completely invisible to their sensors." The professor scrolled through the data, his practiced eye-catching details that would determine the success or failure of humanity's grand revelation. Each ship carried technology that the Council races believed to be centuries beyond human capability. Not because humans weren't capable, but because they approached problems from fundamentally different angles. Elsewhere in the vast underground complex, Captain Sanjay Mehta strode onto the bridge of the UES Thermopylae, the flagship of humanity's hidden fleet. Unlike the utilitarian designs of Council vessels, the bridge was arranged in concentric circles, with his command chair at the center. The design philosophy reflected a quintessentially human approach: adaptive, intuitive, and unpredictable. "Status report," he called out, settling into his chair as crew members worked at their stations. "All systems green, Captain," his executive officer, Commander Riley Chen, responded. "Stealth systems at full capacity. Weapons primed but safed. QDE link established with all fleet vessels." Mehta nodded, studying the holographic display showing the positions of Council warships throughout the galaxy. For 50 years, humans had meticulously mapped the movements and capabilities of every significant military vessel in Council space. The aliens believed their technological edge made them invincible. They were about to learn otherwise. "Admiral Chen has initiated the countdown," Riley informed him, checking her secure communications panel. "We deploy in 47 hours. Send word to all captains," Mehta ordered. "Final systems checks and crew readiness drills. I want everyone at peak performance when we reveal ourselves." As the commands were relayed, Mehta allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had been fighting for survival since they first evolved on Earth, against predators, against the elements, against disease, and against each other. That crucible had forged something the comfortable Council species couldn't comprehend: adaptability in the face of overwhelming odds. The aliens called Earth a death world, as if it were something to be ashamed of. They never understood that surviving on such a planet required innovation, cooperation, and strategic thinking that their evolutionary paths never demanded. "The Council thinks we've been struggling to catch up to their level," Mehta said quietly to his executive officer. "They never considered we might be moving in an entirely different direction." Riley nodded, her expression serious. "Do you think they'll understand, even after the demonstration?" Mehta's lips curved into a small smile. "Understanding us isn't the point. Respecting us is." The Council chamber erupted into chaos as the holographic displays showed human vessels positioned near every major homeworld in the galaxy. The Maldorian defense minister, a heavily decorated veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, knocked over his water vessel as he frantically accessed his military channels. The Xanthi delegates huddled together, their crystalline forms vibrating in distress patterns. The Trisian high speaker attempted to restore order, his amplified voice barely audible above the pandemonium. Admiral Chen stood calmly at the center podium, the eye of a galactic hurricane. Her diplomatic uniform, always impeccably maintained according to council protocols, now seemed like a costume she had finally discarded. The difference was subtle. She stood straighter, her eyes more direct, her presence commanding in a way that had been carefully concealed for years. This is an outrage. The Fresnik ambassador's tentacles flashed rapid patterns of indignation and fear. You bring weapons into a peaceful assembly. Chen's laugh was genuine, surprising even her staff. I've brought nothing into this chamber except the truth, Ambassador. The weapons were already in position, have been for months. You just didn't know about them. On the massive central display, real-time footage showed the UES Thermopylae hovering above the Fresnik homeworld, its sleek design unlike any human vessel the Council had ever documented. Similar ships maintained positions near 26 other major worlds. These are merely representatives of our fleet, Chen continued, her voice steady. We have smaller vessels positioned near every Council world, space station, and strategic resource facility. They have been there for some time. The Artaxian Supreme Commander pushed forward, his exoskeleton clicking with each aggressive movement. Impossible. Our detection systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. We would have seen them. Chen turned to face him directly. Your detection systems search for what you expect to find. Signatures matching known propulsion systems, energy emissions within expected parameters, materials common to Council ship designs. She smiled slightly. We don't use any of those things. The implication slowly dawned on the assembled representatives. Humans hadn't been struggling to replicate Council technology at all. They had been developing entirely different approaches based on their unique evolutionary perspective. For 50 years, Chen continued, you've treated Earth like a curiosity, an anomaly that somehow produced sentient life despite being what you call a death world. You've restricted our territories, limited our trade, and monitored our developments while patting yourselves on the back for your tolerance of the primitive newcomers. She gestured to her aide, who activated a new set of holographic displays. These showed the punitive trade agreements, the resource quotas, the military restrictions that had been systematically imposed on Earth since first contact. We accepted these conditions not because we had to, but because we chose to study you before making ourselves truly known. Her voice carried throughout the chamber without technological amplification, another skill humans had developed but concealed. We learned your languages, your cultures, your technologies, and your weaknesses. We integrated ourselves into your societies at every level, while you barely noticed we existed. The Trisian high speaker's crystalline form pulsed with uncharacteristic agitation. What do you want, Admiral Chen? Is this a declaration of war? Chen's expression softened slightly. If we wanted war, High Speaker, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Your worlds would already be experiencing the consequences of your decades of condescension. She stepped away from the podium, walking slowly around the inner circle of the chamber. The most powerful species in the galaxy unconsciously leaned away as she passed them. We want what we have always wanted, to be treated as equals, not as curiosities or potential threats to be contained. She stopped before the hegemony of Seven's representatives, the oldest and most secretive species in the Council, and we want the truth about how this Council really operates to be known to all species, not just the privileged few. The eldest hegemony member's ancient eyes narrowed. In that moment, Chen knew they understood exactly what humanity had discovered during their 50 years of quiet observation. The true power structure of the galaxy was about to be exposed. Admiral Voxthar of the Maldorian Empire stood on the command deck of the Unyielding Dominance, his scaled hide flushing deep crimson with rage. Around him, his bridge crew frantically worked at their stations, trying to restore functionality to systems that should have been impervious to outside interference. Status report, he bellowed, slamming a clawed fist against his command console. "Sir, we're experiencing cascading failures across all major systems," his first officer reported, mandibles clicking in distress. "Environmental controls, weapons, navigation, communications, they're all cycling through random operations. We can't override." The massive view screen before them showed the human vessel, the Thermopyla, according to its hull markings, maintaining position just beyond traditional weapons range. It was unlike any human design the Maldorians had documented. Sleek and predatory where Council vessels tended toward functional bulk, it seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of the nearby star. "Impossible," Voxthar hissed. "Our systems are equipped with 17 layers of quantum encryption. No species in the galaxy could breach them all simultaneously." "Except we did," said Captain Meta's voice, now coming through the command deck's internal communication system. "Your encryption is impressive, Admiral, but it's based on mathematical principles that assume certain universal constants. We approach mathematics differently." The temperature on the bridge plummeted suddenly, causing frost to form on control surfaces before just as quickly returning to normal. The gravity shifted from standard to nearly zero and back again. Throughout the mighty vessel, every system demonstrated that it was under someone else's control. Voxthar had faced the most dangerous species in the galaxy during his 3 centuries of military service. He had never known fear. Until now. "What do you want, human?" he demanded, struggling to maintain his dignity as his flagship became a puppet in unknown hands. "A conversation," Meta replied, his tone surprisingly cordial. "The kind that happens between equals." The view screen changed to show the captain on his bridge. Unlike the utilitarian command centers of Council vessels, the human bridge was arranged in concentric circles with crew stations that seemed designed for collaboration rather than hierarchy. Meta himself was an unassuming figure, lacking the ostentatious symbols of rank that Maldorian officers cultivated. "You see, Admiral," Meta continued, "we could have destroyed your fleet the moment you emerged from hyperspace. Your shields were momentarily down during the transition, a vulnerability your engineers have never managed to solve. We could have fired conventional weapons or simply overloaded your core containment systems." With clinical precision, the human captain described 12 different ways they could have annihilated the pride of the Maldorian fleet without firing a single weapon. Each method was illustrated on the displays surrounding Voxthar, showing simulations of his ships being destroyed in various ways. "But that's not who we choose to be," Meta said, his voice softening. "Earth has seen enough war in our history to know its cost. We don't want conflict. We want recognition and respect." Through his fury and fear, Voxthar felt something unexpected, a dawning sense of respect for these creatures. The Maldorian Empire had risen to prominence through military conquest. Had they possessed the advantage the humans now demonstrated, they would have used it without mercy. "Your weapons are operational again, Admiral," Meta informed him. "Your environmental systems are back under your control. Your hyperdrives are functional. You can fire on us if you choose." The human's expression remained calm. "But before you make that decision, I suggest you check your long-range sensors." Voxthar signaled his sensor officer, who worked quickly at her station. "Sir," she said, her voice hushed with disbelief, "human vessels have neutralized the defensive systems of every major Maldorian military installation. Our colony worlds, our shipyards, our capital. They're all exposed." The Admiral slowly sank into his command chair. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never faced such a comprehensive defeat, and not a single shot had been fired. "Your council representatives will be contacting you shortly," Meta said. "I believe they're about to propose a new diplomatic approach to humanity. I suggest you consider supporting it." The human's image vanished from the screen, leaving the bridge in silence. For the first time in their expansionist history, the Maldorian Empire faced a species they could not intimidate or overpower. As Voxthar stared at the now empty view screen, a troubling thought formed in his mind. Perhaps the humans had been the apex predators all along. Dr. Sheila Nakamura, officially listed in Vrel records as Research Assistant Third Class, calmly continued her work as security forces swarmed through the genetic repository of Vrel Prime. For 7 years, she had maintained her cover as a diligent but unremarkable alien scientist, content to perform basic analysis tasks, while the Vrel's top geneticists pursued their groundbreaking work. None of them had ever questioned why a human would accept such a menial position among the galaxy's foremost biological researchers. That was their first mistake. The human. The security chief's voice echoed through the vaulted chamber. Detain the human immediately. Dr. Nakamura looked up from her workstation with a perfectly calibrated expression of confusion as 4 armed guards surrounded her. "Is there a problem, Chief Krevlax?" she asked, her Vrel language skills flawless after years of immersion. The chief's sensory tendrils quivered with agitation. Surveillance devices have been discovered throughout the repository. They bear human manufacturing signatures. "How distressing," she replied, rising slowly from her station. "I hope you find the perpetrator quickly." The chief's compound eyes narrowed. "The perpetrator has been found, human. Your diplomatic credentials have been revoked. You will be interrogated extensively." Nakamura's demeanor changed subtly, a straightening of posture, a shift in gaze that made the security chief instinctively step back despite being surrounded by armed guards. "Chief Krevlax," she said quietly, "those devices have been in place for 6 years. Your security systems have been scanning them daily without recognition. What does that tell you about the technological gap between our species?" Before he could respond, the facility's emergency systems activated. Containment fields around the repository's most dangerous specimens strengthened to maximum power. Backup generators came online. Environmental systems optimized for Vrel physiology. Nothing was damaged. Instead, everything was suddenly functioning at peak efficiency. "We never sabotaged your work," Nakamura explained as the guards looked around in confusion. "We enhanced it. Check the data cores from the past 7 years. You'll find subtle improvements to your research methodologies implemented through my menial contributions." Throughout the facility, other systems came under external control, not to damage or threaten, but to demonstrate the extent of human infiltration. On the main display terminal, a complete map of every human operative embedded within Vrel research institutions appeared. There were hundreds, all in seemingly insignificant positions. "Why?" the chief demanded, his voice barely audible. "Why infiltrate without sabotage?" "Knowledge," Nakamura replied simply. "We came to learn, not to destroy. Earth's approach to genetics differs fundamentally from yours. We wanted to understand both, to create a more complete picture." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in countless facilities where humans had been quietly working in the background for decades. On the banking world of Kaltar Prime, senior financial analyst Thomas Chen activated protocols that revealed how humans have been documenting the illegal financial operations of the banking consortium for 20 years. In the Trizian archives, custodian Maria Diaz demonstrated how she had accessed and cataloged ancient records that had been deliberately hidden from most council species. In the council chamber, Admiral Chen continued her revelations as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Our operatives were instructed to observe, learn, and document, never to sabotage or harm," she explained to the stunned representatives. "That was a choice we made from the beginning. We wanted to understand the true nature of this galactic community before determining our place within it." The Artaxian representative rose slowly from his position. "You speak of peaceful intentions, yet you have violated every security protocol in council space." Chen's expression remained calm. "We violated protocols that were specifically designed to keep us ignorant and dependent. Tell me, Representative, why does the Genetic Compatibility Directive exist? Why are humans forbidden from accessing certain technological specifications? Why are our ships subject to inspections that no other species endures?" The chamber fell silent as the implications of her questions sank in. These weren't random restrictions. They formed a pattern, a deliberate effort to contain human development. Your security wasn't breached because we are inherently aggressive, Chen said softly. It was breached because you gave us no choice but to work in the shadows if we wanted to be treated as equals. The Novari delegate, representing one of the youngest council species, spoke up unexpectedly. How many other species have been similarly contained? The question hung in the air like a physical presence, giving voice to a suspicion that many smaller council races had harbored for centuries. The diplomatic wing of the council station had never seen such frantic activity. Species that had barely acknowledged each other's existence for centuries now huddled in urgent consultation. Power blocks that had stood for millennia fractured and reformed in real time as the implications of humanity's revelations rippled through the galactic community. Admiral Chen moved through this diplomatic maelstrom with practiced ease, her decades of training now serving a different purpose than originally intended. Her aide, Commander Jackson, remained constantly at her side, managing the flood of meeting requests from previously dismissive species now desperate for human attention. The El-Shuri delegation is waiting in Chamber 3, Jackson murmured as they navigated a corridor filled with representatives from a dozen worlds. They've brought their speaker of truths. Chen nodded slightly. The presence of an El-Shuri truth speaker, a being genetically modified to detect deception across most species, was significant. They're testing whether our offers are genuine. In the private meeting chamber, Chen faced representatives from 15 minor species, races that possessed full council membership but minimal actual influence. The El-Shuri diplomat, her feathered crest rising in a display of formal greeting, spoke first. Admiral Chen, your revelations have upset the established order. Her voice carried the musical quality characteristic of her species. Many see opportunity in this disruption. Others see danger. Chen took a seat at the round table, deliberately choosing not to position herself at the head. Change always brings both opportunity and risk. The question is whether the potential benefits outweigh the dangers. The Novari delegate, his scales glistening under the chamber's lights, leaned forward. Your proposed council restructuring would elevate many voices that have been systematically marginalized. The dominant species will resist this with every resource at their disposal. They already are, Chen acknowledged. The Maldorian Empire has recalled its diplomatic corps. The Trisian hierarchy is threatening economic sanctions against any world that supports human proposals. The representatives exchanged concerned glances. For millennia, they had survived by carefully navigating the demands of more powerful species. Now humans were asking them to risk everything for a more equitable system. The El-Shuri truth speaker moved to the center of the chamber, her specialized sensory organs fully extended. What guarantees can Earth provide that you won't simply replace the current powers as the galaxy's new overlords? Your technological capabilities clearly exceed what anyone anticipated. Chen activated a small holographic projector. Complex technical schematics appeared above the table. Defensive systems, shield technology, and sensor arrays unlike anything in the Council's technological database. These defensive technologies would allow your worlds to resist coercion from any species, including us, she explained. We're offering knowledge and protection, not dominance. The truth speaker's sensory tendrils quivered as she processed Chen's physiological responses. She believes what she is saying. The speaker announced to the chamber, there is no deception. An Aurelian representative, his crystalline form pulsing with cautious hope, spoke next. Why would humans share such advantages? What do you gain from elevating species you could easily dominate? Chen's expression softened slightly. Earth was once divided into competing nations. The strongest dominated the weakest through military and economic pressure. This system produced centuries of conflict that nearly destroyed our world. She paused, making eye contact with each delegate. We learned, through bitter experience, that true stability only comes when all parties have both voice and protection. A galaxy ruled through fear and domination will never achieve its potential. As the meeting continued, similar discussions occurred throughout the station. Smaller species calculated their options, weighing generations of subservience against the risk of supporting humanity's proposed reforms. The dominant powers, accustomed to unchallenged authority, found themselves in unfamiliar territory, facing a species they could neither intimidate nor control. On the station's observation deck, the Xanthi diplomat Te Rana stood beside an ancient hegemony elder, watching the unprecedented diplomatic activity through the transparent dome. "We dismissed them as primitives," Te Rana observed, her crystalline form shifting in patterns of troubled contemplation. "We believe their compliance indicated inferiority rather than strategic patience." The elder's withered form barely moved, but his eyes, ancient beyond comprehension, narrowed slightly. "They are more dangerous than you understand. They must be contained or eliminated." Te Rana turned in surprise. The humans have demonstrated restraint despite possessing overwhelming advantages, perhaps cooperation. "They threaten foundations you cannot comprehend," the elder interrupted, his voice barely audible. "If the council structure changes as they propose, secrets will emerge that must remain buried." As the elder departed, Te Rana remained at the viewport, watching the stars. For the first time in her long diplomatic career, she found herself questioning the wisdom of the ancient powers that had guided galactic civilization for millennia. Perhaps, she thought, it was time for something new. Deep within the ancestral fortress of the Hegemony of Seven, in chambers untouched by outside species for millennia, the elders gathered in emergency conclave. Their withered forms, sustained far beyond their natural lifespans by technologies forbidden to other species, arranged themselves in the ancient circle of deliberation. "The human incursion cannot be tolerated," Elder Vex Moria stated, his voice barely a whisper yet carrying clearly to all present. "They have come too close to matters beyond their comprehension." Elder Zalthran, the youngest of the seven at merely 4,000 years old, responded with unusual hesitation. "The cascade device failed. Our most secure installation was compromised without our knowledge. Perhaps negotiation." "Negotiation?" Elder Krenvath interrupted, ancient eyes flaring with rare emotion. "The humans have exposed operations we have maintained in absolute secrecy for 50,000 years. Our control of the Council is at risk for the first time since we established it." The truth hung in the air between them, a truth that no species beyond their sacred circle had ever been permitted to know. The Galactic Council had never been a coalition of equals. It had been a carefully crafted illusion, a mechanism through which the hegemony had guided the development of all sentient species according to their inscrutable designs. Until the humans. How did they discover the cascade device? Elder Zalthran asked. The facility's existence was known to only 7 beings in the galaxy. In response, Elder Vex Moria activated a holographic projection. A human appeared, not a diplomat or soldier, but a maintenance worker in a simple gray uniform. The elders recognized him as part of the cleaning staff who had maintained their private chambers on the council station for the past decade. "Hello, elders of the hegemony," the human said, his expression betraying no fear or reverence. "My name is David Chen, maintenance technician, 3rd class, or at least that's who you thought I was." The human explained how he had accessed their most secure communications over years of patient observation, how he had pieced together fragments of information while dusting their quarters and emptying their waste receptacles, how the hegemony's absolute conviction in their superiority had blinded them to the most basic security vulnerability, the beings they considered too insignificant to notice. Throughout the fortress, emergency alarms activated as security systems detected multiple breaches. The elders' personal guards rushed into the chamber, their ceremonial weapons ready. "The humans have penetrated our defenses," the guard captain reported, his voice strained with unprecedented concern. "They've accessed the historical archives." Elder Krenvath rose from his ancient throne, genuine fear visible in his expression for the first time in 3,000 years. "Seal the archives." Activate the purge protocols. Too late, came Admiral Chen's voice, suddenly emanating from every communication system in the fortress. We've already transmitted the contents to every council species. They're learning the truth about your guidance right now. In the council chamber, chaos erupted as previously hidden historical records appeared on every representative's data terminal. Species that believed themselves to have evolved independently discovered evidence of hegemony genetic manipulation. Civilizations that took pride in their technological achievements learned how the hegemony had selectively introduced or withheld knowledge to shape their development. Wars that had decimated promising worlds were revealed to have been orchestrated to prevent challenges to hegemony control. For 50,000 years, Chen addressed the stunned council, her voice carrying clearly despite the tumult. The hegemony of Seven has manipulated every aspect of galactic development. They've decided which species would advance and which would stagnate. They've engineered conflicts to eliminate potential rivals. They've suppressed technologies that might have liberated worlds from their influence. The evidence was irrefutable, drawn directly from the hegemony's own meticulous records. Their absolute confidence that no lesser species could penetrate their security had led them to document their manipulations in excruciating detail. On their private channel, Elder Vex Moria addressed Admiral Chen directly. You cannot comprehend the forces you're unleashing, human. Our guidance has prevented catastrophes beyond your understanding. Chen's response was measured. Perhaps you've stunted the natural development of 1,000 civilizations to maintain your control. Either way, the choice no longer belongs to 7 ancient beings in a hidden fortress. It belongs to all sentient species, working together as true equals. Throughout the galaxy, the foundations of power that had stood unchallenged for 50 millennia began to crumble, and humanity, the upstart Deathworlders who had been expected to accept their assigned place at the bottom of the hierarchy, had been the catalyst. 1 year later, the newly formed Stellar Concord held its inaugural session in a chamber that physically resembled the old council hall, but functionally represented a transformation. The concentric rings remained, but representatives now rotated positions regularly, ensuring no species maintained a permanent position of visual or procedural dominance. Admiral Helena Chen, now Earth's first Concord counselor, watched from her current position in the middle ring as delegates finalized the Charter of Shared Advancement. The document formally established the principles that would guide interspecies relations in this new era: self-determination, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense. The final vote stands at 2,873 in favor, 92 opposed, and 17 abstentions, announced the Xanthi facilitator Tehrana, who had surprised many by becoming one of the strongest advocates for reform. The Charter is hereby ratified and becomes the foundational law of the Stellar Concord. Applause and various species-specific expressions of approval echoed throughout the chamber. Chen exchanged a satisfied glance with Captain Meta, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Concord. They had achieved their goal without firing a single shot in anger, a genuine diplomatic revolution backed by the potential for force, but never requiring its use. As the formal session concluded, representatives mingled in a way that would have been unthinkable under the old hierarchical system. The Novari delegate approached Chen, his scales now displaying the iridescent patterns that indicated his recent elevation to speaker status. Counselor Chen, our xenobiologists have made remarkable progress implementing the adaptive agriculture techniques your people shared, he said, excitement evident in his voice. Worlds that have struggled with food security for generations are projecting full self-sufficiency within 5 years. Similar conversations occurred throughout the chamber. Species that had been systematically denied technological advancement now partnered with human experts to implement centuries of overlooked innovations. Worlds that had been pitted against each other under hegemony manipulation were establishing direct diplomatic relations for the first time. The Moldorian representative, a younger and notably less militaristic successor to their previous delegate, joined their conversation. The joint defense exercises have demonstrated unexpected synergies between our tactical approaches, she acknowledged. Your emphasis on adaptability complements our traditional focus on overwhelming force." Chen nodded in agreement. Different evolutionary paths lead to different strengths. The true power of this concord lies in combining those strengths rather than forcing conformity. Across the chamber, former rivals now engaged in productive discussions, their perspectives broadened by the revelations of the past year. The exposure of the hegemony's manipulation had initially created chaos, but ultimately fostered a new sense of shared purpose among formerly competing species. The hegemony itself remained in isolation, their representative seats empty. Their influence diminished but not eliminated. They had withdrawn to their ancestral territories, refusing to participate in the new galactic order. Monitoring stations maintained careful observation of their borders, a prudent precaution given their demonstrated willingness to take extreme measures. The chamber's alert system activated suddenly, drawing all attention to the central holographic display. Long-range sensor readings appeared, showing an anomalous structure approaching from beyond the galactic rim, something massive and clearly artificial. Initial analysis suggests it's approximately the size of a small moon, reported the Trisian sensor specialist. Its composition doesn't match any known construction techniques. Estimated arrival at the galaxy's edge in 17 standard months. The chamber fell silent as representatives processed this information. Under the old council, such a discovery would have been concealed by the dominant powers, its implications controlled and potentially exploited. Now, representatives from 3,000 worlds simultaneously received the same unfiltered data. Chen stepped forward, joining representatives from a dozen other species in the analysis circle that formed spontaneously. "We're detecting energy signatures consistent with propulsion systems," noted the Artaxian engineering expert. "This is a vessel, not a natural phenomenon. Or a weapon," added the Moldorian military analyst. As discussions intensified, Chen realized that the true test of the Concord was just beginning. The galaxy faced an unknown contact, potentially the first encounter with truly external intelligence. How they responded would determine whether their new alliance represented genuine progress or merely a reshuffling of the same old power dynamics. The El Shiri truth speaker approached, her expression solemn. "The timing is remarkable, is it not? Just as we establish a new order, we face an external challenge that will test its foundations." Chen nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps that's the nature of progress. Each solution creates new challenges to overcome. She surveyed the chamber, where representatives now organized themselves into research, defense, and diplomatic working groups without waiting for hierarchical direction. "But for the first time," she continued, "we face those challenges truly united, not through coercion, but through choice." As preparation protocols activated throughout Concord space, Chen felt cautious optimism. The Deathworlders who had forced a galactic awakening had created something unprecedented, not a human-dominated system, but a genuine community of equals. Whatever approached from beyond the galaxy's edge would not face a collection of manipulated, competing species, but a civilization united in its diversity. The dawn after darkness revealed new horizons and new challenges to overcome together.